Hello, thanks for checking out this video. Welcome to the channel. My name is Zach. This channel is mostly science fiction and fantasy reviews. And on this once a week segment is when, yes, I talk about science fiction and fantasy books, as well as what I've been watching, which usually is kind of foreign cinema, foreign movies, and TV series, which also cross over in my interests of sci-fi and fantasy. So with that said, and jumping right into it, because I'll make space for what I'm showing here. What I want to talk about is the book that I finished this weekend and had such a great time with, and that is Christopher Ruoccio's Howling Dark, book 2 of this Sun Eater. This second book, the follow-up to, obviously, yes, the first one, Empire of Silence, completely blew me away. I had just such a good time as far as like an enjoyment factor. Yeah, I really had a great time. I just left the book with that like warm, fuzzy feeling that I was cheering, fist pumping in the air when some of the scenes towards the ending, towards the climax happened. All of the just things that happened to Hadrian and the crew. It was, yeah, the Red Company. It was just great. I had just such a good time. The enjoyment factor was off the charts. I love the ideas that Rocchio presents in this second follow-up, where we start the novel picking up right where we left off at the end of Empire Silence. We catch up to Hadrian, and they are on their trip with their captured slave. I guess they'd call that slave, but captured prisoner is not slave, right word, but prisoner from this Yeltsin clan, and they are on their way to Vergoso to follow up on this lead to try and end the war between the Yeltsins and the Solon Empire. And we get to Vergoso. We have such cool things that happened on Vergoso. I'm going to keep this non-spoilery, just I guess maybe light spoilers of what happened in the first book. Like, yes, they meet up with the Yeltsins, but they go to Vergoso, they learn a bunch of cool things on Vergoso. And then after Vergoso, they go to another planet for the next kind of mediation event. Total awesomeness that happens. And yeah, I just talking about this in vague generalities, because there's a lot that went on. And if you're not reading Sun Eater, hopefully, if you've already read it, you know what I'm talking about. I had just, yeah, such a great time. This is squarely, I feel, exactly what I'm looking for. It has that blend of everything I loved about Dune, and specifically the later books in Dune. And if anyone else read this and know what I saw or read or heard, because I've listened to the audiobook, I felt like Rocchio was giving a lots of nods and like wink wink moments to books that he drew inspiration for, because in the narrative, in the prose, he'll mention the God Emperor. And of course I'm thinking, yeah, it's like a nod, a wink to book 4, God Emperor of Dune, or when he has Hadrian put something in his sabertash. Like, that is a word I have not heard anywhere else except Gene Wolfe's Book The New Sun, which Rocchio has mentioned as a source of inspiration for him. So he does a lot of nods to Book the New Sun. One of the characters in Hadrian's crew is a lictor, which is, yes, the profession of of Severian in Book of the New Sun. So there are all these cool references, and it's like words and languages that Rachi uses of like a nod to Book of the New Sun. I definitely picked up on that, and I definitely picked up on the references to Dune, like the references to the God Emperor. Just kind of the whole Solon Empire in general feels very inspired by the the Empire in Dune. And semi-spoiler, but I'm talking about this in vague, and I don't know if you can really spoil Dune because it's so old, but books 5 and 6, which are personally my favorite 2 books, well, maybe 4 is my favorite. I love God Emperor, but 5 and 6, I love the final trilogy of the original 6 books of Dune. And in Heretics and Chapter House, we have these, it's spoilers, but it's Dune. The 2 creatures that we don't know who they are yet, Marty, how they kind of watch the no ship and they can see the no ship, and they're these like off-screen kind of omnipotent beings that are sort of affecting the story, but not. So if you know, if you read books 5 and 6 of Dune, you know what I'm talking about. But I really felt that feeling of these characters with the quiet. So I don't know, maybe I haven't read the analysis of this, so maybe this is like common knowledge and everyone knows this, but I just, yeah, in general, I love the references to kind of Dune and talking the spoilers, but the events that happened to Hadrian in book 2 parallel what happened to both Paul and Severian in Book of the New Sun and Dune. Yeah, I just definitely felt that with the ending of Howling Dark and how everything ties together to the title. So, wink, wink, if you've seen it, or if you've seen it, but if you read Howling Dark, what the title refers to when you find that out at the end, that kind of event of the Howling Dark felt like such a direct nod to Book of the New Sun, to Severian's journey in, I think it was book one when it happened to Severian kind of went through that transformation, and also Paul in book one, and maybe I guess you could say Leto kind of went through transformation as well, but that kind of character transformation. Yeah, anyways, I'm just rambling here because I just loved it. I want to go into more spoilers. I'm going to keep this super generic because this is like a weekly vlog update, but yes, do read Sun Eater. I am so excited to read the rest of Sun Eater. I've already bought the entire series up to book 7, Shadows Upon Time, because everything else was on sale. So this is maybe the last day of the Audible sale, but I bought all of them. I cannot wait to start book 3 of Sun Eater. But that said, what did I jump into after Howling Dark? Because yes, it came through with the library. So I briefly and quickly read Fight Oligarchy by Senator Bernie Sanders. So this is a super short, it was like a 3-hour audiobook. So I literally read it while I was still doing my bike ride on Saturday and then read another book afterwards. So it's super short, only 3 hours long. So it's less if you're listening at a faster speed. Hard to give it a rating. It just felt like a campaign speech by Bernie Sanders. So if you've kind of listened to any of his talks, that's what he talks about just in book format. But anyways, just it's there. I read it. It's like a businessy / politics book. But what I read after that, and what is more exciting to talk about, just because I want to log everything, is I started through the library hold Gunmetal Gods Book 2 by Zamil Akhtar, Conqueror's Blood. So this is what I'm currently reading right now. I am about 38% here on Monday, December 5th today, right? No, 8th. Sorry, dates are crazy. Yes, on December 8th, I am at 38% of Gunmetal Gods Book 2, Conqueror's Blood. Kind of had mixed feelings so far. Similar to Howling Dark, the second book does feel better. Like the authors are growing in their style as they get along with more experience. Just paralleling Book of the New Sun, not Book of the Sun, Sun Eater. So Howling Dark is book 2 of Sun Eater. So yeah, Rocchio definitely, Chris Ruocchio grew as a writer in book 2. It's much, the prose is tighter, everything just better. And similar here, Akhtar in book 2 of Gunmetal Gods. The plot in general is more cohesive, but that said, I'm not enjoying, I guess it was like the first 5 hours of the book. We follow 2 new characters. So it does one of those things where, unlike Sun Eater, we start the story of book 2 of Gunmetal Gods following a new plot line. And then at about the 5-hour mark, so it was about like 25%, so the first quarter of the book, you're kind of introduced to a new magic system of blood, hence referring to Conqueror's Blood in the title, a new, I guess, component of the magic system in Gunmetal Gods. And then we also follow 2 new female characters who are interconnected in the world, so it does feel cohesive because it happens in the same empire, in the same cities that we were introduced to in the first Gunmetal Gods. But then finally, about the 25% mark, about 5 hours in, we've so far, as far as I've gotten, at 40%, 38%. One of the characters finally meets up with Keva, so we finally get a link back to the first book, and that's what I was waiting for, because we ended the first book on Keva kind of having his transformation and his learning about the magic system and the jinns and things that he went through in book 1. So we're finally linking up, and now it's like starting to all come together. And on the positive side, he only took, 25%, 5 hours to kind of establish the new plot lines, introduce to the new, friction point and plot point that's going to propel this story forward. Like the plot of this book is going to revolve around these 2 new characters and the things that happened in this opening kind of prologue, extended prologue of 5 hours. But now we've met up with Keva. Keva is now involved. He's getting involved with this one of the characters, and they seem to be on their way. So I assume we're going to link up to Micah the Metal later as well, but we'll see what goes on and how the story develops. But overall, yes, the writing has improved here in book 2 of Gunmetal Gods. And now that we're back introduced to Keva, I'm making more of the connection in my head, seeing some of the magic system. And yeah, now I'm getting the world building that I enjoyed. I guess the magical world building, I should say, because the first quarter was a lot of like the political world building, learning about the different factions and the kingdoms and that kind of the politics of the land. Whereas now that Keva's back in the picture, we're getting kind of the magic, as the title and the blurb says, the Eldritch horror magic part of this story again. So it's picking up and definitely going to power through and continue. Not like I need to power through. It's good. I'm very invested in the story, but I'm excited that now things are starting to pick up pace with Keva. And that is what I'm read and reading. So with those two done, or three books done with a super short Bernie Sanders book, what did we watch this past weekend? Well, what we watched first was Hit and Fun. So it's not Hit and Run, it's Hit and Fun. It's a new movie starring Louis Koo of fame of so many Hong Kong movies, and also Gigi Long. So she's also a superstar actress who's been in a ton of movies that I remember. Both these actors, Louis Koo, Gigi Long, have been in so many like classics of Hong Kong cinema. And this new movie, Hit and Fun, it's a boxing movie, which seems to be, yes, a genre that I've seen a ton of movies lately from all of Asia and US. You have like, yeah, Dwayne Johnson's movie, The Smashing Machine in the US, and you have a ton of like 100 Yen Girl from Japan, the remake in China about like a female boxer. Yeah, a bunch of boxing is like, yeah, a hot sport to make a movie out of because it has that human element story. But this was so. I feel like the setup for the movie, like the initial opening, like plot point that gets the characters to agree to have a boxing match was felt very manufactured, and I didn't really buy in why the two female characters had to fight and got so physical with each other. But they did, and yes, then we see Louis Koo's character being the elder trainer. Of course, he has to mentor them and grow them to be boxers, and then his old disciples, of course, are somehow in the mix in this. And yeah, and they all comes together, and then they all live happily ever after with kind of a happy ending. So it was just an okay movie, like a 3.5 out of 5. I think I rated it on Letterboxd. But that was Hidden Fun. It was what it is. But then more interesting, also out of Asia, what we watched on Saturday was surprising that it wasn't nominated with the awards that were announced today on Monday, but maybe it'll be up for an Oscar. It wasn't on the Golden Globes list, but maybe for an Oscar for international film. And that is on Netflix. So do check it out on Netflix. Left-Handed Girl, directed by Shiqing Tso, and also not directed by, but co-written and edited by Sean Baker, who is, you may know from directing Anora. So it has kind of his Anora like or the Florida Project style to it, where it's very real. So Left-Handed Girl follows, I guess you'd say, three generations of women. You have the mom and the kids, and then the grandma who comes in later. And they're all just having like adventures, not adventures, but life in Taiwan and Taipei. So it's a very interesting portrait of this family where the main character, or not the main character, but the motherly figure, Shufen, she is like a single mom raising two girls, trying to make it in the city in Taipei with a food stand, and the girls are off having their own adventures. One is like a rebellious teenager, and the other is the from the title, the left-handed girl, the youngest, Yijing. So Ian and Yijing, the two girls. Ian is sort of rebelling against her mother because of, yeah, she's this growing up, didn't go to college, she has some kind of like chips on her shoulder, just trying to survive in the city. And then Yijing is adapting to life in a new town again, moving from the countryside back to Taipei, and she is trying to go to school, trying to live with her mother running this noodle stand. And then she has to go meet like her grandmother, who is part of a sibling family with her mother and her other like aunts and uncles. And then her grandmother gets involved in like some kind of immigration scheme, and so the grandmother's off doing her thing with like immigration, and then she has family drama between the sons and the sisters, one of the sisters being Shufen, the motherly figure. And then Shufen is just trying to survive with her like ex-husband in the picture, and then the noodle stand, and then the girls. And yeah, it's just like a family drama film, but it was so well done. You felt the characters so real. It was very emotional. The ending kind of elevates it almost like a 5-star for me. I thought it was just a spectacular ending that just tied everything together. Some parts were a little bit slow because there's like these little vignettes of life, like when certain things, when like Yijing is in school and has like a school adventure, or when Yi-And is having boyfriend problems, or when Shu-Fan is having relationship problems. So these little like mini stories, and they kind of all connect and intersect at the end with the grandmother's 60th birthday party, and it all kind of comes to a head, these other plot lines, and it collides. And yeah, and it just, the ending was so well done, and it just left you with that kind of warm and fuzzy feeling. So I was, yeah, again, surprised that it wasn't up for a Golden Globe, but hopefully it gets nominated for an Oscar because it has a director will attach to it, Sean Baker, so it kind of lends that credibility. And also, Shi Ching So, the actual director of this one, she was also on the Florida Project and I think some other American release films. So she also has kind of that, critical darling. So I think this will be hopefully a contender for some prizes in international, and it's on Netflix. So despite what Netflix buying everything, but I do think you should check it out if you have Netflix. Left-Handed Girl, highly recommended. So, and then lastly, to wrap things up, what are we watching? So we're watching not a whole lot. We're still struggling with what to watch. So Pluribus, yeah, continuing to watch that every week. Yeah, it's getting better. So the last episode I felt was a little bit slow. This episode, because you had a bunch of different elements going on, and then reading some analysis or watching the analysis YouTube breakdowns, I do feel there's, yeah, something going on with Zosha and the characters, and I feel now we're getting drawn back into the mystery in this latest episode. So getting pulled back into Pluribus. So I think it's getting better again after kind of a slow episode last week. When we started for the first time, we started The Legend of Vox Machina, which is kind of old. Yes, it's 2022, so 3 years old at this point. But yes, the new series came out, The Mighty Nine, so that's why it's back in the headlines. And we checked out. We watched the first 2 episodes. Has that very epic fantasy D&D feel. Yeah, it's like a band of adventures. Everyone has their class. You know, one's a bard, one's a mage. Well, not mage. She's like a plant sorcerer, blanking on the term, but yes, she's can manipulate plants. You have the bard, you have the elves that are like, assassins. So yeah, it's very cool with just classic fantasy tropes. They're fighting dragons, they're going to taverns. So yeah, it's a nice, like, kind of relaxing show that we've enjoyed to just relax to and not totally get sucked into a very overly complicated plot like Pluribus. But Legend of Vox Machina will continue. We've only watched 2 episodes, so many more to go on Vox Machina. And then lastly, one more thing to talk about is I'm slowly working my way through and almost finished with To Be Hero X, even though I haven't talked about it on this segment, but I guess I'll do a final review of the series. But I'm on episode 18, and so far it started a little rocky, then I got drawn in, and these last couple episodes, right now I'm on the Ghostblade arc, and it feels very character development-y, but I hope we get back to more action after these couple episodes, because these last couple episodes with Lolly, who is like the Iron Man, Ironheart armor girl, and then now with Ghostblade, I feel like these storylines are trying to intersect, but aren't really having a lot of drawing the overall plot, because we just got introduced to the other new plot point, and now they're also on this another investigation which is happening in the world. But maybe, as I've heard, that this series does end well, so I think it'll all come together at the end, and it'll make sense once I kind of get a grasp on what's the larger picture with the later episodes. So that's what we watched and what I read, and the plan to read is to finish up Gunmetal Gods 2 this week. So that is on the docket, finishing up Gunmetal Gods 2. And then new hold for the week is the next book of The Expanse. So that'll be nice to get back to a sci-fi after reading Gunmetal Gods, which is more, horror fantasy, as they call it. But yes, and I also still have Malazan Book 3 on hold in my library queue, not library, Libby queue, or not Libby, Audible queue. So yeah, Malazan 3 is stuck in Audible at 70%. So I still have 30% to go, which is like 20 hours of audio to go of Memories of Ice. So I do need to get back into Malazan. So I'll move back in the center. And thanks for watching this weekly review. And if you have suggestions for things for me to check out, things I missed in Sun Eater that I should include in a longer review, if you want to blab about Sun Eater or Malazan or Gunmetal Gods, would love to talk books and talk fantasy. But thanks for watching and have a great day. Have a great week.